All right, I want to get started. There's so much exciting material to cover, and I really want to make sure we have enough time and that we don't go over the time. There's a lot of cool stuff that will be released today. I think one of those ones that I want to bring to your attention is GPT, I think 5 is about to be released today. So that's something you want to keep track of. So that's going to be in a couple of hours. A lot of rumors around that. Very interested myself to see what these new models are going to bring. But today, the emphasis is going to be on Gemini CLI, specifically, Gemini, the Gemini models, and how to leverage the CLI specifically. So what I want to do is I want to make this as interactive as possible, and for you to take away something from today, and hopefully, you're encouraged to go and try out a few of these tools. So 2 tools that I've been using recently are Claude Code and Gemini CLI. Now, I can talk about how these 2 compare. I will potentially do some other session on that for our Academy subs later on, because there's been a lot of questions about that. Which of the CLIs should I use? Is it Claude Code? Is it Gemini CLI? Is it some other CLI? There's so many of them out there. And there are a few others that will also be released very soon. You will see there's a lot of news around that. The week is just getting started. Literally, there's so much releases that are coming around this technology. So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. So what I want to do is, yeah, sure, I can start off with a quick introduction. I typically don't introduce myself because I suspect you already kind of know me from Twitter or something like that. But yes, I'm an independent AI researcher. I do a lot of research for my own company and for other companies as well. I do provide some consulting on the side. I also love teaching and doing training. So you will see me a lot of doing these type of sessions. Very passionate about that. And I'm curious. I have a lot of curiosity about where this technology is going, and I do a lot of experimenting, and I love sharing this stuff. I think there's a lot of value that you can get either professionally or personally, and that's the stuff that I think about every day when I get up. That's what I think about. How do I use this technology to to enhance my life and augment everything that I do? That's basically kind of the backstory for me, at least. But yes, I'm in different places like LinkedIn. I write a lot as well. I have really popular newsletters. I share a lot of research papers. It's something that I learned when I was doing my PhD. I enjoy doing that. I still enjoy doing that to some extent today. I think I was probably one of among the small group of people that started to share AI papers, but no, it's everyone sharing AI papers. In a way, it's a good thing because there's a lot of communication about these ideas. So, but yeah, this is something I enjoy doing, sharing insights and things like that. I've also worked on, on training these models. Previously, I was at companies like Meta, helping to shape up this technology, language models, training these models, what kind of data you need, things like that, fine-tuning these models, evaluating the models as well. So I have some history, and that has been kind of my emphasis for the last couple of years. So that's a little bit about myself. All right. So I'm looking at the chat, right? I think what's important here is to make this interactive. So what I've learned recently is that I could give you a demo, and it could just be time for later for a discussion. And I'm going to try to keep my demo actually short, but at the same time that you take away something, right? So that's kind of my goal. So let's get started with this. So I have here a terminal open, right? So this is why it's called Gemini CLI, because it's in the terminal, right? Some of you may come from the world of ChatGPT, right? You use agents there. Some of you are using things like Init, and some of you might be developers that are using things like the Agents SDK, LangChain, whatever that may be. So there's something here for everyone, I think. And why I'm excited about the CLI is that, so the trend seems to be, for me at least, that we're going from, these chat-based applications into more agentic solutions, right? Agentic applications, meaning more work gets done for you automatically and asynchronously. So what does that mean? So you will see a little bit of what I mean by that in a bit when I show the demo. And this, I think, is the future of AI agents, right? Things that are done for you on your behalf but you still have a bit of control over the results, over any actions and decisions, right? You want to offload some decisions for the system, and there's a lot that can be automated that you don't need to be involved in, but you also have to build and use these tools with the idea that, you know, you want to build something that's useful and something that's actionable, but you also have to build with you in mind, right? Like you being part of the process. So this is why I think these tools are kind of really interesting. Now, the Gemini CLI, I think the Claude Code, these different systems are like, they're indeterminate, meaning they were designed to have a bit of control over your, you know, in this case, your local machine, right? Your file system and things like that. So you can edit files. And that means it can be pretty good at a lot of applications, but it can also be pretty bad. So you need to understand that there's a lot of control that you're giving the agent. So the more you can customize it for what you want it to do, the better the experience is going to be. You know, you're not going to like do something catastrophic with your system, destroy your system, delete files and things like that. So we want to start off with that because that's really important. Anyways, that's enough talking. I wanted to just give an intro on that. What's the inspiration behind, you know, covering something like Gemini CLI? Even if you are someone that's like not developer oriented, I think this is still going to be extremely useful for you. And the reason I say that is because, look, I have been experimenting with Claude Code. Claude Code, I use it like pretty much 60% of the day. I would use Claude Code as this is my top AI tool now. And I sometimes switch over to Gemini CLI because it has access to Gemini, which means it has access to longer context, which is useful for me for tasks that are, you know, that require long context understanding and like analysis of bigger files, things like that. So I'm going to share an example of what I mean by that now. So how do we start this? I have everything set up. If you want to know how you can set up your, you know, your Gemini CLI, there'll be a lot of instructions over, you know, out there. You can just go to the Gemini CLI GitHub repo. I think that would be the best place for you to go get started. And so I think that's the one that I recommend. So I've been just going through like their docs, you know, finding out what's the most possible, that's the most capable thing that you can do with Gemini. And I think I have a really cool demo for you guys today. So let's go and start with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open Gemini. So this is basically how you start it. Once you have it installed, I think it's a node package, so you can install it with whatever package manager you have. So this is how I've started it. Now, some people ask me, why are you using Gemini CLI inside your IDE? What is this about? Well, it turns out that for a lot of the tasks that I do, I actually love to interact with, you know, either Gemini CLI or Claude Code. And I like to have this editor as well, where I can sort of tap into, in this case, my IDE, which is Windsurf, could be Cursor, could be anything, right? Could be VS Code. And the reason I like this like switching is because I love using the tools like autocomplete, like the tab autocomplete from Windsurf, which has gotten really, really good. You know, so for instance, this file, I'll just like show you here. So let's say I wanted to add like an MCP server here, right? So if I wanted to add an MCP server, you can do it, you know, via commands. But if you don't remember your commands here in the Gemini CLI, you know, you can always go and manually do it in the editor. So the cool thing about the editor, so let's say I wanted to add something new here. So let's say it's like, this is an example here. I'm just going to use the same one there. But you see that autocomplete really like because this saves a lot of time. So here it might not be obvious because I'm just adding like a couple of lines. But imagine it if you had something that was generated by Claude Code and you need to refine it a bit more, and you now want to be involved in editing that code because you saw something that the system wasn't producing really well. Well, I can just switch to that editor, right? I could just switch to the file and do the edits myself. And I also like the diff view as well. So the diff view is really useful here. This is the reason why I use the CLI within my IDE. So if for those of you that use, let me just undo this before my MCP configuration here. So for those of you that are familiar with Claude Code, right? So you can also just run Claude Code and Gemini CLI at the same time as well. So you can also switch between the two. This is another, I think, advantage of using the IDE here. So let me see if I can open up. Yeah, there we go. So I can open up Claude Code really easily here. And now I have, okay, I have the tab autocomplete. I have the Claude Code also working. So I can just switch between these things, right? So normally what I do is I use the IDE, which is Windsurf here, as my editor. I use Claude Code as my like code agentic system. And then I would use Gemini for like content creation on other types of tasks that I work on, right? So it's like I have all of these systems right within the interface. And I really like this because I can just switch off, like switch on and whatever. Let me just close this one. Okay, so that's the idea. So just in case you were curious about this. But you can use it, you know, in the CLI if that's something that you prefer. All right, so let's start off with something here. I've prepared a few things here for you, but let me take a pause here because I noticed a lot of questions. So I just want to answer a few questions and then get rolling with the demo. I've been holding the demo for a bit too long now, and I just want to get started with that. But let me just check the chat here. All right, so there's a lot of stuff coming in. All right, let me see. Oh yeah, so any thoughts? So there's a question here. Any thoughts on Qwen CLI? It's a fork of Gemini CLI. Yes, I think with Qwen right there, I believe it's called, there's like a coder, Qwen coder or something like that. All of these companies will probably have something like this. I can see that pattern. I haven't tested it yet, to be honest. I don't really use the Qwen models that much. I mostly would use these proprietary models because I mostly work with the APIs. So I've moved a little bit away from fine-tuning models and fine-tune models just because a lot of these proprietary models get a lot of the job that I do, you know, they help me get done the jobs that I do. So I don't rely too much on these open source models that much today as I used to before. But anyways, I'm getting into it again. And so this is something I'm actually looking into, especially with like these new open source models like Qwen, right? There's the GLM model. There's even OpenAI has been doing open source models. So it's something you want to be testing and you want to like be, you know, on top of just to see if there's, you know, if there's some potential there. But I think like in my experience so far with using these CLIs, these coding agentic systems, I would, you know, it's either between Gemini, the CLI, and then the Claude Code. Claude Code is the one I use the most, but those are the two I have the most experience with. And I'll be doing some comparison between the two here and there. I think that would be useful just to kind of ground this conversation and say, well, you know, Gemini is not perfect. Gemini CLI is not perfect. It needs a lot of work. You know, Claude Code, I think, at least had some kind of momentum, I think, starting from last year. And they have, you know, I think they were one of the first ones to introduce this idea. And so I think Gemini is still a little bit behind, but there's still a lot of potential with it still today. Just some thoughts on that. Yes, and I like that, Leonardo, for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up. So the reason, and this is something I've been pushing that team, right? So interact with the team a lot, give them feedback. I like this idea of giving free credits, and they launched like that, right? This is why I think they gained a lot of momentum. Like they launched with free credits, means you can use the system, you can experiment with it. That's super important. So I like that, and they do give you more credits through the developer program for sure. Yeah, security issues is always going to be a real problem, especially with the MCP stuff. I'm going to show you like the MCP later, and maybe we can have a deeper discussion about that. Okay. Luis, okay. So your question is, what's going to be taught can be used in Claude Code CLI as well? Definitely. Everything that I'm going to teach you here, that I'm going to show in the demo, can be done with Claude Code. In fact, I already did it with Claude Code. Most of the workflows that I use today, I do prefer to use Claude Code. It's just a lot better, and I'm going to be honest about that. But I think there, again, as I said, I hope to bring some light into like what are the advantages of using something like Gemini CLI. Okay. All right. Anyways, so let's get started with the demo here. So what I want to do is I've configured ahead of time a few things here. So if you do the slash, right? If you do slash like this, okay. So just before that, I want to show you that you see this little this little message here. It says I have one Gemini.md file, and then I have you know, I have these MCP servers. This Gemini file here basically is the memory of your system, right? It's not the most like advanced method on how to do memory, but it's memory for the system in a sense that you can give it instructions if you want to tune the behavior of Gemini. And in fact, when you do start a project, it's a really good practice to So start off with a Gemini.md file. I believe, I'm not sure. Okay, so they do have it, right? So let's say I were to want to start off with, I have a new project and I want to start, the project has some kind of structure and you want Gemini to always be grounded with that structure of that project and whatever information you want to give it. So basically what you would do is you would give it like init, right? And this init function command, what it does, well, the slash command, I'll just use the right term here. What it does is going to give it that context, right? So now when you're using Gemini and you're using it within the project, launch it within the project, which in this case is, for me, is course. I'll show you the root folder here. Course, everything goes under course. This should be renamed. This should not be course because there's so much stuff that I do here, like my projects, my open source projects, my research, my courses, my workshop, everything is here. So I should definitely change the name. But anyway, so that's the project. And within this project, I have like different configurations for Gemini that will help Gemini get grounded on how I want it to behave, right? You really need to pay attention to this. Otherwise, if you use Gemini out of the box, you won't get the behavior that you want. Especially Gemini specifically, I think really needs help with that context, right? The additional context. So let me see if I actually have, I don't have it here, but because this is my root folder, right? So if I go to a specific project, inside that specific project, I would have different Gemini files. But this one, it doesn't make sense. This is way too much folders here. So let me share with you. So this one will start Cloud. So this is what that MD file will look like. It's the same for Claude Code that is this for Gemini CLI. So I could just use this, reuse this. But anyways, this one was an example I put together for Cloud. So this is the memory file. This is what it looks like. So it basically is like an MD file. It has like different information. So this one, I put together these instructions for Cloud, which I can also reuse here in Gemini CLI if I wanted to create, like, let's say an MCP tool or MCP server. So because I do build a lot of MCP servers, this set of instructions is really important context for the system so that it knows what are the commands that it needs to use. It has an example of the code of how the MCP server should be implemented. So this is sort of like a meta application of these CLI tools. Like you're actually building tools with them for them, essentially, right? So that's the idea here, at least with this one. But anyways, just an example of what a memory file would look like. This is just the example right here. And it doesn't change that much with Gemini CLI. Maybe there's a little bit of structuring that Gemini .md will include, but basically roughly speaking, is roughly the same. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? What I just said. If it doesn't, please let me know. I can definitely clarify more. Anyway, so that's the idea. Yes, it'll be recording for sure. All of our stuff has recording. So let's see. Yes, and obviously you keep updating it, right? If there's new stuff, like as you work with the system, this is why I said I think this is the lesson I've learned with Claude Code, Gemini CLI, and all these CLI tools, is that, or even things like Windsurf and Cursor, to be honest. So you always have today where it stands, the system is not intelligent in the sense that it's gonna like take it's gonna incorporate memory. Because maybe it struggled with something. No, that's something that you explicitly need to tell it. So in essence, you are tuning that system by giving it some like memory or additional instructions, but you have to be the one tuning it, right? Ideally, it would be the system doing that by itself. But this is why I tell a lot of like developers that I work with, it's like you actually have to give it the instruction. You actually have to tell it the context. This is why there's a lot of conversation around context engineering, because you have to do that part. Later, I think what we're expecting with the newer models and the newer architectures that are coming soon is that this stuff is more self-improved in the sense that it improves itself. So let's say it made a mistake about an MCP server that I asked it to build, and it's making that mistake consistently. I'll just take a note on its own. It's just say, okay, I need to make a little memory of this because I'm making mistakes, and I know how to like correct it. So the next time I know how to do it. But this is stuff that you have to do manually today. So definitely, I think that will be improved over time. Yes. So again, the way you would add it here, it doesn't make too much sense for me. But let me see if I can actually just to give you a quick demo of that. So basically what you want to do is you want to go into a specific project. So I have a project here as an example. So I'm going to go into this folder here, right? And then inside this folder, it's just a README file. And basically what I can do, let me see if I can, yeah, make this a little bit larger. Basically what I can do is I can go and start Gemini now in this one. And then here I would initialize again a Gemini file, right? So, okay, when I zoom in, it looks a little bit ugly. Okay, all right. So what I can do is I can just tell it init, something like that, right? So I can start it. So notice it says now analyzing the project to populate it, right? So it says, okay, I'll start by analyzing the current directory to generate a comprehensive. And again, this is an important step. You want to be doing this. Let's say you already have some kind of project or some coding or code base. This is what you want to do. You don't want to miss this part. That's why it's called init. I think the name speaks for itself. So anyway, so I'm going to allow this. Let's see what it's going to do. So it's going to go into this folder here because this is the folder I'm working on. Okay, so it's doing something. Notice it's calling different tools. It's calling the shell. It's listing files. So it's doing something, right? And then it's going to look at the workflow. So this one is something I was testing recently with Gemini CLI, which is this GitHub action stuff, which I won't be able to cover today, but it's something that recently came out as well. But anyway, so it says, okay, it looks like, okay, I'm gonna say, but by the way, it's calling the tools to do this, to create this file for you, right? So I'm just gonna allow it. And then let's see what it shares. Oh, did it say that? Well, it did not say that for me. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it didn't install it properly. You might need to uninstall it, but that should work. I mean, it hasn't really given me issues. Like I have done this. I think it might be problematic if you're doing this from your root folder, like a root directory where you have like a lot of projects. I think it's better to use these type of like commands within a specific project. This is why I switched to this project in particular, because I noticed that it does tends to not do it really well when you have too much of these files and so on. But that should be a recognized command. Anyway, so it's taking a bit of time, right? Like this is one of the things that you will encounter with these like CLI tools. Like they're quite slow. I think Gemini in particular is a lot faster than Claude Code, but they're quite slow because they're using the reasoning models for all of this stuff, right? It is an agent. At the end of the day, it has access to tools. It's reasoning about what it's doing. So you can expect it that, especially if it has a lot of information, a lot of context, that it will take a bit of time to like complete that task. And sometimes it's doing things that you shouldn't be doing, by the way. And that's where that Gemini, that MD file actually comes into play, because now you can go into this file and you can tell it, so this is an instruction I want you to follow. You must answer with short responses, something like that. You can add more stuff here. You can add more instructions about how you want it to behave, right? That's the idea with the Gemini file, with the Gemini.md file. Okay, that's how I utilize it. I use it for storing facts about the project, helping the system when it makes mistakes, and offering it some corrections, adding some high-level instructions about how I want it to like respond, and things like that. Okay. Let me just post this. I'm not save that. So it's still going with that, and it hasn't finished. I'm just going to cancel that because that wasn't the demo I wanted to do. I just wanted to show you that quick example, and I'm going to go back to my other stuff that I was doing. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. Anyway, so that's one important part, right? And then what I want to do here is actually I want to focus on the demo that I had prepared. I still haven't went to the demo. It's already half through the, but it's okay. I'm answering some questions. That's fine. Anyway, so what I will do is I'll just open. So I want to show you here, like you have tools, right? So if you look at tools, this command here, so it will give you the set of tools, right? So you notice that sometimes it will call the shell. Well, that's just going to be able to like remove files, right? It's going to list files in your directory, things like that. It has access to those things. It can also do a web fetch. So I can ask it something like, can you tell me the latest rumors from GPT-5? That's the thing that's most top of mind for a lot of us today. So basically what it will do is, again, this is a high level, it's an agent that's set up with all of these tools. That's basically what it is, right? The interface it shouldn't really matter too much here. It's just an agent. It's an agentic system and has all these tools, and they'll just use these tools to like perform tasks. So here, out of the box, it's going to use Google search, right? So it's searching the web for this. It figures out that it needs to search for GPT-5, so it's doing the GPT-5 search here, and then it's going to return some results. Okay, there we go. So we have a summary of it. Notice it, right? If you guys are like familiar with Perplexity, this is basically what a Perplexity response looks like. So this is nice, and I like having this. Essentially, right? Like, why do I need something like Perplexity search when I can just do it within here in this context? Maybe there might be some use cases where I can use Perplexity, but I think having it like this is really nice. So something I want to call out here with Google search, and this is the same for Claude Code. So you get a summary of it, but you don't get the actual raw information from the sources where the websites that were scraped, right? You don't get that here. If you wanted that, if your application needs, the actual source or the website information that was scraped from the web, then in that case, you probably need a custom tool for that. And there's a way to do that within Claude Code and Gemini CLI as well. So what you will need for that is something called an MCP server. So these are like MCP tools. The MCP servers are like tools basically that you can configure. They can be scripts, they can be whatever you want them to be. They can be literally, they can just be prompts, like prompts that you would maybe want to reuse everywhere. So this is something I've been experimenting with. I've actually just stored my templates, like prompt templates, in an MCP server, and then I just connect this MCP server everywhere, right? Because MCP is like a standard way on how to create and give these agents tools. So spend a lot of time understanding what an MCP server is, how to configure it, because I think in the future, if whatever tool you're using, you're going to be taking these MCP servers everywhere. So learn how to use this. That's why all of these tools support MCP, because it's really an important concept to be familiar with. So here, what I will show you here is like my custom tools that I've created, via MCP servers. So I want to share the list. Okay, don't get scared too much about that one. This is something I've just added. So this one has, for this particular project, I have a few of them configured. I was just testing some examples here to see it works, but I have this thing called Exa Search, right? So this Exa Search here is essentially like web search, but it's configured and customized. You basically have more control over, how the search behaves. So if your agents need all that context and all that raw information coming from the web search results, then this is the tool that you want to use. You either use Exa Search, SERP API, or you would use Firecrawl. Firecrawl is another popular one, and I know a lot of developers use it, but these are the two that I use the most. Exa Search and Firecrawl would be the ones that I use. So let's say if I wanted to use, in this case, I wanted to use, let's say, can you tell me the latest rumors from ChatGPT? Use Exa Search for this. So you can just tell it like that. Again, it's an age, just expecting it, give it the instructions. Let's see if this actually works. What I've found with Gemini CLI, a little like piece of advice here. So notice what it did, right? So look at this, look at this. So this is, I think, a very, very, very bad experience that I've gotten with Gemini CLI. And the reason is because I'm expecting that this system understand, right, that I'm telling it to use the Exa Search tool that it has here to do the search, but somehow it prefers to use its built-in tools over these MCP tools that I've configured for it. And this is not great, because now when you want to build like an agentic system or an agentic workflow here, a more complex workflow, it will not, it will not do what you want it to do, because it's not using the right tools. It's just using its own built-in tools. I really don't like that experience. So let's say I want to actually clear this out. So I just can do clear like this, and then just clears out my terminal here. And I actually want to try the command again. Let me see. Search about GPT-5 using the Exa Search MCP server. Let's see. I insist. I think I need to use this. And this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not perfect. Now it's going to do it. Look at that. So what was the difference here? Why? How can I fix this? By the way, this is a question for you all to think about. So now I mean, I switched around the query, but how did it now figure it out? Okay, you have some kind of tool here already configured. So let me just like say yes here. So now I know for sure it's using. Okay, so now you see I'm getting this entire raw data. This is what I use the APIs for, because now it's like I'm sure that I'm going to get a lot more details, right? And this is what I love about using my own search APIs. I use them everywhere because the responses are just a lot better when you have full context. And Gemini, there's no reason why Gemini should not use full context. Gemini has this 1 million context window. Use it, and the responses will be a lot better. That's a good point. Google bans other search engines. No, I don't think that's what's happening. I mean, I think the takeaway here is that it doesn't matter the tool that you're using. It's really important to diagnose and to debug what's going on behind the scenes. This is what I tell everyone. Like, yes, it's an agentic system, and you probably want to like use it to get work done really fast. But it really pays off to understand, why is it not using the tool this way? Why is it like not giving me the thing that I wanted to give? Can I customize this fully? That's the question you should be asking. Can I customize the behavior of the system, right? What do I need to do to customize it? And I found that the more context the system has, right, about its tools and things like that, the better it's going to do. So I'll go back to the question initially that I asked. This is such an important one. It doesn't matter if you use Gemini CLI, Claude Code, whatever it may be. How do we fix this? There we go. So I asked and I got an answer. So I think Leonardo is right. I think you want to put instructions in that Gemini.md file, right? About what is your preferred, what is your preferred set of tools? And it will also help, by the way, to tell it that it's a tool that does this, and it has an MCP server that does this, and the MCP server has all of these tools. That context, if you add that to the Gemini.md file, that is going to make that, it's going to make Gemini a lot better. From my experience, this is what I'm learning about this tool. So I want to share a little bit also about Claude Code here. I know it's not about Claude Code, I keep bringing it up, but there's something interesting also about Claude Code when you use the default web search functionality. In fact, what I found out is that, I'm not sure how much of you are using Claude Code, but actually they're using their latest model, which is Claude Opus 4, right, to do the search. And basically it searches and does a summary of the search. So basically what you get is a summarized version, but it's using GPT-4, which, sorry, not GPT, Claude Opus 4, which means it's going to be a super expensive task. So if you're doing a lot of web search in Claude Code, be very careful if you're using the standard APIs, because it's going to cost you a lot. And this is something I learned recently. I didn't know about this. I mean, I would have preferred to use a cheaper model for search, but for some reason, the quality of search is not as great if you use a cheaper model. So you want to combine that if you're doing summaries with the more. So this is an insight that's great to share, because I think if you are building with web search tools, that's something that you want to do. You want to use like your best model for summarizing, because the data is kind of like mixed sometimes. You get a lot of like really messy data with search from search results. So you want to have some way to kind of summarize that nicely, and you want to use a really good reasoning model for that. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that, I think. But anyway, so this is great. And we discussed again, you want to like maybe tell in the Gemini that MD that you have all these tools and so on. So tell the agent what it has access to, so that it does better at the stuff, and it does behave a little bit better, for the things that you want. You don't want to always be explicit at this, because this is not really efficient. So I want to actually share something right after this, which is, let's say I want to use the search tools within a workflow that uses other tools as well, right? How do we do this in Gemini? So, well, the standard way of doing this, let me just clear this. So the way, let's say I wanted to do, okay, I have this idea where I want to do, I have this query, something like latest news from OpenAI, something like that. So I have this query. I have this idea that I want this to be like let's do a little bit deeper research into latest news from OpenAI. I just don't want a single answer, right? Like when you go to Google, it gives you like a overview. I don't want that. I want something to do something a little bit deeper than that, right? Let it be like a deep research agent. So how do you do this within Gemini? I think it's a cool demonstration. This is something that you can test really easily. So if you want to do that, then you can tell it this is a query. Query is latest news from OpenAI, and then you can tell it something like what else? So you can tell it latest news from, let me see what, Anthropic. So they're kind of related. So how do you actually do this? And then after that, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to use Access Search tool. But before that, I wanted to please plan a set of search subtasks before searching the web. Use Access Search. I'm really curious. I haven't really tested, but I'm really curious what they will do. Use Access Search MCP server to search the web, and then summarize the results in a nice one-pager, something like that. Okay. So with these agents, you can ask it things like that. And I'm really curious how to. So what I'm expecting it to do is like, okay, it has two different queries that it needs to go and search, right? So this is a more complex search. It needs to plan the set of like search subtasks, which means it's going to take this and then it's going to, okay, latest papers might make sense, latest models might make sense. These are the kind of news that I want, right? And it should be personalized for me. So once it does that, then after that, it needs to use this Access Search MCP to do the search, because I don't want it to use the default search. Let's see if Gemini CLI can do this, right? Out of the box, let's see if it can actually do this task. So I'm pretty curious. I haven't really tested this one, but I want to make, okay, so it did figure out, okay, I need to use Access Search, which is a good thing to see. I'm just going to allow this. All right, so it's doing something. But what I wanted it to do, I saw that it didn't really do this first part here, which is the thing that I really don't like about Gemini, right? So I'm getting the results, but is this, I mean, the results it doesn't matter too much, but I noticed that the results, the generation stuff is pretty good. I'm not going to complain about that. But did we miss something here? Like, did it actually miss something from was I not clear about what I wanted it to do, about how I wanted it to perform this task? What was missed here? Any clues on that? What was missed? What did we miss here? What did the agent miss here? It did the search, right? It definitely did a search. You can see it there. Right. It did not do planning. That's the answer, right? It's not planning. Like, that's really important for this task. Maybe I could have been a little bit more specific, like, hey, you know, plan ahead, do some sort of subtasks, like 4 subtasks, search subtasks for each one of the queries, and then do the search. The reason why this matters for this use case is because, again, I don't want it to just focus on like model releases, which I think that's what it's going to do, just focus on model releases. And the reason I need that is because I have a feeling that that's not going to give me good results. It's not going to be, robust in the results it's going to give me. I needed it to be a little bit more comprehensive. So I want more control over that. And planning helps agents to do that really well. So that planning is really important. Here, you saw a very clear example that the system ignored that instruction because, like, probably it didn't have a tool to do planning. Hey, I don't have a tool to do planning, so I'll just skip this stuff. So that's why I'm suspecting. And the other thing is like there's no instruction about how we should deal with these queries. So maybe adding something on Gemini will help. But there's actually an easier way to do this, which is going to be the demo I wanted to get into from the beginning. So if you stayed, till right now, you're gonna love this one. So how do I fix this? Well, in Claude Code, the way you can fix this is you just use sub agents for this stuff. You can just use sub agents, make an agent for planning, make an agent, build up agent for doing the search stuff. And you can even have an agent or a sub agent for doing the summarization, which is this part. But here, like, Gemini CLI is a little bit like not doing the thing that I want. So what do I do here to fix this? Now, I want to share with you something that was recently introduced from this team, which is the slash commands. The slash command actually solves this problem. So anytime you want to do something more customized and something a little bit more advanced in terms of the workflow, and maybe you're using different tools or you want the agent to use different tools, this is the way forward to go as it stands. In the future, we will have probably sub-agents, and I heard from the team already that they're building that out. So I'm expecting sub-agents to be introduced into Gemini CLI very soon. I'm very excited about that because I think one thing I found about Gemini CLI, because it uses Gemini has really good long context understanding. It's going to be useful for a lot of tasks, a lot of analysis type of tasks where you're analyzing lots of data, like heterogeneous data, things like that. If you have reports, PDF files, things like that, that you want to analyze, it'll be a really good use case to use Gemini. So even today, as it stands, it's actually really good for that. But let me go ahead and show you what I mean by the / command. So inside of this folder here, notice I have a Cloud, and I also have a Gemini. So in Claude Code, basically you can set up agents like this. This is not available in Gemini, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure when it does get introduced, I'll just kind of like copy and paste my templates. But anyway, so you have these little templates that you can set up called / commands as well within Claude Code. And I'm just going to show you really quickly how it looks. So it looks something like this right here. So basically, it says, please follow carefully the following. So it's like an orchestration that you're doing. It's like a specific instruction of steps or a set of steps that you want the agent to perform. And you basically tell it, hey, you have an agent that does the planning, do that with the planning. And you can even tell it, if I give you multiple queries, you can run them in parallel as well. You can just instruct it like that. And Claude Code knows how to do that really well. Unfortunately, in Gemini CLI, you cannot do this. There's no concept of agents, first of all. There's no idea of parallelization, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. So how do we actually get something like this, right, that mimics this workflow that we have, we're using with Claude Code? So we are going to use / command for that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that in Gemini. So in Gemini, this is the workaround. So I've created this folder, .gemini, in the root folder, and then there's another folder called commands. This is something you have to do yourself. And then inside of the commands folder, there's a deep research TOML file. So the difference is that Claude Code uses MD files and Gemini uses TOML files. I think the TOML files, I actually prefer the TOML files for some reason. I'm a developer, so I work a lot with like YAML files, TOML files, things like that. So I actually like this because it has a nice structure. Like you can tell it, so in this case, I tell it like perform a deep research. This is the description for, just think of it as this is like the agent, right? This is the orchestration that's going to happen, right? And then the prompt tells it your task is to perform deep research to answer the user query. These arguments, we're going to pass it from Gemini CLI. Let me just open it here. It'll be more clear. So from Gemini, from here, I'm going to pass it the arguments, and it's going to take the arguments and it's going to say, okay, follow this specific set of instructions in the exact order. So then it's going to say step 1, right? So this, by the way, this little template is something I have to refine. I spent, like an hour or two refining this. For some reason, like Gemini just insisted in using its internal tool, built-in tool, and it just refused to use my MCP tools that I've configured for this stuff. And so hopefully in this demo, nothing changed from yesterday to today, and it works. Because I tested it, it worked really well. So don't be surprised if it actually doesn't work when I do test it now. But anyway, so it says like, then use the Exasearch MCP server. So now I tell it, I have 2 MCP servers. One is for planning specifically. So this is a tool for planning. And then I have another MCP tool for searching, right? The Exasearch, which I just showed you. And then finally, you will just summarize the stuff. This, I'm not using a tool for this. I noticed Gemini is really good with summarization, so I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to use its default capability to do summarization. So essentially, I'm just using 2 tools here. So / command basically orchestrates or gives the system some instructions, and you can tell it to interact with different tools. You can even pass it the arguments as well. So it should be smart enough to actually do this really well. Again, this is a concept that I haven't like really I only experimented with this with the use case I'm presenting to you here. I don't know how robust this is. If you test it and you get some good results, let me know. But if you're struggling with it, also let me know, and we'll see how I can help you with this. I'm very fascinated to use this type of / commands to get the results that I want. But there might be some issues with it if you try it out yourself. Anyway, so let me see if I can now do this query. So once I have this configured, I don't need to do anything else. But the cool thing now is I can go to /, then I can go to deep research, and there we go. So we have this deep research command. This, by the way, is just the it's just a has to do with the because basically what it expects is going to have like multiple folders. So if you have like it's just the structure of the folder, right? You might have like commands for deep research. You might have commands for, I don't know, analyzing documents. You might have commands for like chat. customer support, whatever that may be, right? Like you will have different folders for that. That's just a structure that it's expected here. And it's okay. It's good to follow that, especially if you have multiple of these slash commands within the within each of these like with use cases. Okay. All right. So now let's just test this. Hopefully this actually works. All right, so I'm going to take this query here. I'm going to modify it a little bit. Actually, it won't use the two queries. I'm just going to use one. And this I'm going to tell it, please plan a set of search subtask. Okay, so what's missing here now is I need to, well, do I need to, how would I query this? Do I need to do all of this stuff? Do I need to do all of this? How would you query this? What's a good example for how to query this? I want to query this the same. I want to do the same thing, but I want to do it with slash command stuff. How do I do that? Any ideas? Yeah, this is gonna be. It can definitely break if they. But I think like I have it on auto upgrade. So if there was some release that came out this morning, it probably will definitely screw up things. And no, because Gemini CLI has been a little bit like all over the place for me. Anyway, so basically what I need to do is deep research. All right. Just this stuff. I'm gonna delete this. Yeah. So when you use it in the IDE, by the way, it's not perfect. Like, by the way, this is not. I'm basically using Bash here, but the issue is that there is no official extension. So Claude Code has this nice extension and it works really nice, right? You can paste code, you can do a lot of things. You can even paste images into Claude Code when you have like Claude Code open like this. You can paste images into it. So that doesn't exist for Gemini CLI. Hopefully they fix this because it's actually quite clunky to work with here in the IDE, especially if you're just using Match. But anyways, so that's why you saw that it was giving some issues here. I'm going to clear this because I don't want that information to influence. So I'm starting again with 100% of the context, right? So I'm going to say, okay, so that's my slash command. And now all I need to give it is just the argument, which is just a query, right? So I'm going to tell it test rumors. Maybe not the perfect query, but let's see if actually, I'm curious what it's going to do. So let's do it. Yes, definitely, Leonardo, you got that right. All right, so this is great. So we're seeing that it's using the planning tool, which is the planning tool here that I gave it, right? If you can see that. Use a deep research MCP server. I needed to tell it specifically this. This is something I don't like this kind of like behavior because this can be a lot better. Like with Claude Code, you don't need to do this stuff. Like you just tell it, hey, it's just smart enough to understand that there's a tool. I have a feeling that I think Claude Code, specifically Claude Code's, Claude Sonnet 4 and Claude Opus 4 were specifically trained, like with agentic capabilities and tool calling capabilities and things like that. So it just knows that it has tools. It's smart enough to know. I don't need to tell it explicitly this. This actually is not a great, great user experience from my point of view. But anyways, like actually, this is how you're gonna make it work. And again, I tested this a lot, and this is what I ended up doing. So this idea, by the way, is like you have an agent that's basically, at least the concept here is agents that interact with tool agents. That's kind of the idea where I was going with this. That means if I need to use an agent within here, so these like tools here are just like doing basic commands basically. But if you wanted to do something a little bit deeper, if you wanted to use like another like model, let's say you wanted to use GPT-5 if it launches, you can actually do that. You can use the APIs, you can include that in your script. It's just a Python script that I'm using here, and you can incorporate whatever capabilities from other models. This is totally possible to do. So yeah, it's quite robust, like what you can do with these MCP tools. So there's something to note there. Okay, so I'll just allow this. Let me see. Okay, so yes, this is nice. It's doing, I think it's returning. Okay, so it's reading the prompt. So this planning tool will load a prompt, by the way. Let me show you real quick, but I don't know if I have time. Okay, I have 5 minutes. I'll show you what that looks like. I have this MCP here and okay, deep research. No, is this one? Yeah, deep research server. Yeah, so I actually had it open earlier. basically it's just a prompt. This is planning prompt very extensive prompt that I use in a lot of my demos. And then I have this tool, which basically just loads the prompt. But in case I wanted to do some extra processing on this, I could just call, OpenAI APIs or whatever other APIs I want, or I could use, the Claude models here as well if I think they're good for this. So there's nothing stopping you from leveraging capabilities of other like providers as well, or maybe open source models. That's totally fine. You can do that really easily with MCP. That's why I love MCPs. I think this is something you want to explore a little bit more if you haven't done it. All right, so that's basically the idea with this. I'm gonna close this. Okay, I loaded it, and then it says, okay, so notice it's just doing its stuff now, right? So it's planning, then it's doing the search, which is great. All right, so I notice it's doing a couple of searches. Look at it right here, query. There's query, there's one for that. There's one for that, recent news. The view is not that great. Again, as I said, this one does like Gemini CLI is not really supported. I would love an extension for this. If somebody's building that, that'll be awesome. So you have all these queries, and then finally you get your results, right? Look how a little bit more detailed this is. But actually follow the thing that I wanted it to do. And then if we look a little bit closely here, it's going to have the GPT-5 model stuff. Okay, that's great. Well, I'm not too sure about the different models. Okay, so there is going to be okay. You saw it here first. If this is going to be the release, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate here, but anyways, this is like I got stuck here because this is interesting. By the way, like if they have like this type of models like being released, okay, there's going to be multimodality, which I do expect. There's going to be more agentic capabilities. It's going to be more coding. It's going to be reasoning stuff. I'm expecting all of that. But I love this. I love this response. And it doesn't have the sources, unfortunately, here at the bottom, because I did not tell it to do the sources. But just in case, I'm going to provide you all the material, this little template here. I'm going to share it when I share the recording. And if you want to replicate this, one little addition that you can have here is like the sources, right? You always want to have, okay, where does this actually come from, this rumor? You want to have the sources here. So that's a little bit tricky to get it to work, especially with Gemini CLI, but that would be something that you want to try. And if you get that to work, then you can apply that everywhere. So it's always useful to check whether you can use the sources. You can incorporate the sources in the final response. All right, any questions? I want to take some questions here. Let me see. Yeah, we do have some questions. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of like people say that, Scott, like think deeply. I think you can probably use it here. It might be a good idea to use it here. I would probably use like another / command for that, like deep think or something like that, ultra think. I'll just use another specific / command, and then I'll try to figure out that way maybe how to like. The unfortunate thing though, like if you're using different / commands, I think that you can only call one / command. I'm not sure if you can actually call two / commands here at the same time, like one / command and then another / I'm not sure if you can actually do that. And this is, I think, one limitation. I think with Claude Code, it's much easier to do this because you just use agents, right? So you use agents, and then within your / command, you would call all the different agents, and you would tell it what to call, and then just Claude Code would just know what to do. But with Gemini CLI, I think it's a little bit more rigid in that sense. Like it's not that customizable. Let's see what questions. Yes, Leonardo, there's a question here. Is there a way to reference number arguments individually instead of all together in the args, like arg0 or something like that? Yes, I believe there is a way to do that. I was supposed to test that. Like, let's say you wanted to do like the same exact query here. Like if you wanted to use another like search, you wanted to run maybe simultaneously 2 searches. I believe you can do that here. Don't remember the notation exactly, but that's the thing that I wanted to. I was going into that, especially because I wanted to try out a few more like ideas with this. But I believe it's totally possible from what I read in the docs. Let's see. Okay, another question: is it hard for Gemini to recognize every kind of tool, or is it mostly for search ones? I think so. Yeah, I use search here, but I think in general it doesn't recognizes these tools, because initially, basically, what I had with this one, it had nothing to do with deep research. Basically, I just wanted to load this only loads like a prompt. Basically, it's not doing much, and it struggled to do that. So I think if you're going to introduce any new tool, it will help a lot if you want it to be consistent. To maybe use mention something in the Gemini.md file. I think it will help a lot, just in case it's struggling. But I think it's in general, though it's not just for a search tool. I think in general it has this issue. But I think it will be an interesting experiment, though, to like really verify this. Yeah, I mean, if it does prefer, if it is the case that it does always prefer to use its Google search, I mean, it's Google at the end of the day, right? Like if there's some kind of system, high-level system prompt in Gemini to use this over all of the other search tools, then that'll be quite evil, I think. That it does that. But anyways, that was an interesting comment from earlier. All right, so question here: I'm a researcher and kind of concerned about if Gemini CLI can cite sources, or I need to verify myself. So that's what I was mentioning, right? Like I think for this, you want it to always be citing stuff, right? Because it can be like, did it make up this stuff? Like yes, I saw like previous models use mini nano. Is this actually true? If it is true, where did it actually come from, right? Was there like a post? Provide the link. That's really important for these search applications. So you can basically maybe try to improve this, like the Exa search stuff. Like Exa search stuff, by the way how I have it configured, I think it's just providing me a summary. But with the Exa search tool, basically you have the ability to tell it to return, right? When you're doing the API call, to return the sources. And so once the sources are in context, then Gemini can take that and then sort of incorporate that into the summarization. Now, if you want to incorporate that neatly into the summarization, I think this is not going to be good enough. Like, because it's data that you're manipulating, you might actually need like another tool to do this, or in this case, you should definitely be an agent doing this, like putting together the sources and so on. But yeah, you can definitely do that once you get it in context and you get it from the APIs. You should be definitely trying that. Okay, any other questions? Anyways, okay, so hopefully I think if you are using these tools like this, you follow along and you kind of get it, how to use these things. I think you know how to use Gemini CLI, right? This is all Gemini CLI offers. The one feature that I've been experimenting with recently was, I'm excited about agents, right? When agents come, I think I'll do another session on that. But the one I was excited about is GitHub Actions. That's really powerful. I don't know if you have used GitHub Actions with Claude Code, but it's really amazing that you can essentially be on the road and you can kind of give it tasks and open a PR and it does a feature for you. Like it can do research for you as well. It's really amazing, this technology, what it can do already. I think GitHub Actions are quite powerful if you haven't explored that. And I heard that they introduced that recently in Gemini CLI as well. So I went ahead last night and experimented with it. The bad news is that it doesn't work as great. I mean, I was testing it, really basic stuff like the search. Okay, it uses Google search to search stuff. And, give me the date for the stuff. It doesn't know, like it gets lost with the date. Like something is wrong with the way how they have configured the system. But I'm going to be exploring more and see how to get it to the level of like Claude Code. I think it's far away from that. So hopefully you got something from this and you're excited about this. I will be doing more sessions about this for our Academy subs. So if you don't know, let me just share the link here before I let you all go. So we do a lot of these internal. This one is a public one, so this one was free. But basically, if you want to keep track of this stuff, we do. It's a paid, basically, a community, and we have courses there. But we also do live sessions. We try to bring experts as well. So we're having a deeper conversation about all of this stuff. So thank you all for joining today, and I'll be providing the recording later. And I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and enjoy the launches that are still ahead for the week. Thank you. Bye-bye.